Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very last week of class. You guys have done a great job all semester. As I've shared with you, I have thoroughly enjoyed reading all of your discussion posts and reviewing all of your assignments. So thanks for a great semester. It's been so much fun getting to know so many of you, to have so many familiar faces again, and I really look forward to seeing some of you again in the summer and then even next fall. So thanks for all your hard work and sticking with it this semester. Let me do a quick overview of what this last week is going to look like. The first thing we're going to do is talk about our very last topic, which will be podcasting. I could have included this earlier when we were discussing verbal communication, but I saved it for the very end because it is a part of our final project. So I wanted to make sure we covered it last for a few different reasons. The first thing we're going to do is just talk about what a podcast is, discussing exactly what a podcast is. And it is a long form version of audio, of verbal communication in an audio form. So it is only your voice. So earlier in the semester, we practiced short form verbal communication where you created and designed your own advertisements. And now we're going to take a look at long form verbal communication. So we've had the chance to do written long form communication, and now we're going to do verbal long form communication. And I'm really excited about it. So we will take a look at what podcasts are. We'll look at the vast variety of styles of podcasts and topics of podcasts, especially in the wake of what has happened in the last year. There are so many new creative podcasts that have been developed, and it is such a cool way to communicate and interact with community. So that is why I'm excited that we are covering it last. We will take a look at, like I said, examples. We'll also take a look at different ways for using your voice to deliver this form of long form content, tips for training your voice. We'll talk about how to select topics, really all the different components of what creates a podcast. And by doing that, we'll look at it through the lens of as if you were creating your own podcast. Because in our final project, you will actually do that. So we'll cover selecting topics, deciding on the style of podcast, designing goals and objectives, creating your script format, so how you're actually going to outline all the different pieces of your podcast, your introduction, your topic segments, the different advertisements and announcements that you'll put in there, coming back for a second wave of topics, and then your conclusion of your podcast. Perhaps there's an interview thrown in there. All of those different things are what come together to create the format of your podcast. We'll also talk about designing a show name, creating a description for what actually appears on the hosting platform once you've created your podcast, and then designing the artwork. So earlier in the semester, we discussed color and how font and color and shape all comes together and is a form of communication. So we'll take a look at how that is for your podcast. Designing a schedule for your podcast. So when are you going to record? Will your listeners decide, or will your listeners expect a podcast every month, every week, every day, every 2 days? And then recording your podcast. So we'll take a look at all the meat and potatoes of what a podcast is, and that will be a great transition into our final project. But before we get there, there's an important topic that I want to cover. You don't have to take such a critical approach to this topic. It's designed to just help you. It's an extra bonus cherry on top at the end of our semester, and I put together a few pages for professional development. A lot of you are at a different phase in your college career. Some of you are looking for your next step. You're getting ready to graduate. Some of you are trying to prepare for internships. And some of you are just starting your college career. So that is still a little bit down the road, but it's never too early to start to think about this. So we will take a look at professional development, outlining your strengths and weaknesses, trying to figure out what you're even interested in. What can you do to try to figure out what it is that you want to do with your career? So creating those steps by researching things, reading different articles, or reading different websites to try to figure out what you're even interested in and becoming aware of what's available to you. And that's truly how I designed this course, was to expose you to a lot of different areas. And I know that a lot of the other instructors throughout this course Tiffany, Laurel, Candace, they all have a similar approach to try to expose you to different things. There might be an assignment or two stuck in there where you're thinking, why am I doing this? And really, it's just to expose you to so many different areas of the industry, to try it on, to see how it fits, and to figure out if it's something that you want to continue with. And also to have a greater appreciation for different areas of the industry, because you're going to work with so many people regardless of what job you have. And the more you know about other people's jobs, the more you can create that professional relationship and work together for a greater good. We'll also talk about creating professional documents. So your resume, what goes on it? How do you outline it? How do you design a cover letter? And how do you create references? So your references are usually people that have a good understanding of who you are, but it's important to recognize that people in your life, you want to give them the professional courtesy of asking if they want to be a reference for you. Maybe they're a reference for a lot of people and they don't have the time at the moment. So references go two ways. We'll discuss that throughout this module. We'll also talk about building a professional foundation outside of those documents. So what does your social media look like? Have you developed a LinkedIn page, which is a professional networking platform? And then we'll discuss professional portfolios. So maybe you are somebody that will require a professional portfolio, or maybe not require, but it will come in handy to have a professional portfolio to demonstrate all of the different skills that you have. The last two things we'll talk about is applying for a job, analyzing those job descriptions, researching the company, understanding the organizational chart, which is something we did earlier in this class, and then the interview. You've got the interview. Now what? How do you prepare for it? How do you prepare for those questions, for the style, for an in-person interview, a Zoom interview? And then let's say you got the job. It's yours and the work is just beginning. So what are some key steps that you can take to set you up for success now that you actually have an interview or a internship or a professional job? So we'll cover all of those things, just a few pieces that I've outlined for you. There's so much regarding professional development and preparing for your next step after your school or while school is still very much part of your life. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to outline some of those things. So then that leads us into our final project. So our final project, as I've mentioned, is actually designing, developing, and creating a podcast. And it is the perfect combination of everything that we have already discussed in this class. So you will have written, you will have verbal, and you will have visual displays of communication. So I've outlined a document. So when you get to the end of this last week, you'll click on the final project tab, and within that page on that tab, there is a document that you're going to download, and that document has all of the information for this project. I really want you to approach this as a project. So please, please, please don't wait until Monday evening to start this. This is supposed to be a combination of everything we've learned, and it's supposed to be fun. This is your chance to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So if you are interested in being a football coach, if you are interested in the health and fitness side of the sport industry, if you want to be an administrator, whatever it is, you get to discuss it. If you want to talk about sporting events and break them down as you're consuming them and give your opinion, that is great too. There are so many different angles that you can take for this type of project, and that's what makes it so fun, is you get to really be in the driver's seat. But there are a few key essentials that you're going to have to include. So in order to do that, I've broken this assignment or this project down into 3 sections. So there's section A, B, and C. The first thing you're going to do is take a look at the key components for designing your podcast. So you are going to determine what your podcast is even about. So that's step number 1. You'll establish your podcast name. You'll design a logo. You'll select the style for your podcast. You'll write a description, and then you'll define the goals and objectives. Now, to do all these things, we've covered that in the first part of this module, but it is also outlined very clearly what those expectations are within this project. So you'll cover all of those areas. Then we will actually create a content schedule. So that is section B. So when you are creating a podcast, if you are the designer of a podcast, you don't just turn the microphone on and start talking. There is a schedule. There is a routine that you are going to follow, and you're going to map out what your podcasts are about. So let's say you're somebody that wants to talk about, I don't know, you want to talk about current sporting events and you want to break down your reaction to everything that's happening. Well, you're probably going to look at a calendar, and let's say you specifically are going to talk about baseball. Maybe you're going to talk about sport in general, but for this example, let's say you're going to talk about baseball. You'll probably want to map out what baseball games you're going to cover. Perhaps there's going to be people that you want to interview. You have to create a schedule. You have to design what all of that is, because there's advanced research and preparation that you're going to have to take. So this is all theoretical. If your topic was baseball and you wanted to create a podcast, what are the first 5 show topics and material that you're going to cover in each of them? So you're going to create all of that, a plan for what you would cover. So you're going to outline all of that for what your plan would be for your content schedule. In the next section, which is section C, you're actually going to record your podcast. So you will pick one of those episodes and you'll record it. You will record your introduction. You will create your material. I want you to have one announcement or one advertisement or commercial within your podcast. At some point, I want you to have a call to action. So what are you calling your audience to do? And then you're going to close your interview, or you're going to close your podcast. So all of that is part of the format of a podcast. We discussed that in the first part of this module. And you're going to do that specifically when you're recording. So you're not just turning it on and letting it flow. There has to be structure. There has to be order. There has to be certain things that you include in a podcast. If you are an avid podcast listener, you've probably already recognized this, or after you've learned this throughout our module and you go ahead and you listen to a podcast after, you can probably recognize all of those different things. The introduction, when the host of the podcast welcomes you to their show, they introduce themselves, they tell you their name, and they tell you what they're going to cover. And then they dive into the material and they talk about their content. And then they're going to take a short break and we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and they're going to read a sponsorship announcement from you. And then maybe they go back into additional material before they tell you, hey, if you like today's material, make sure you come back next week. We're going to talk about XYZ, and we can't wait to see you. Again, my name is Nicole Stoll, and I thank you for listening to our podcast this week. Can't wait to see you next week. Something like that. Whatever it is, you're the person that's in the driver's seat. So you get to be as creative as you want to be. Perhaps the announcements and the advertisements are right away at the beginning, or maybe they're at the end as you are closing out your show. Wherever you decide to put it, like I said, you're in the driver's seat. Now, the length of your podcast for this assignment is anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. So you don't have to talk for an hour. You don't have to talk for half an hour. It's 5 to 10 minutes. You have to have all those different sections in there. But 5 to 10 minutes, again, in a long form content is something that I think all of you can do very easily for this project. I do want to note that the quality of your recording is going to be considered. So I am hoping that your recording will be professional. It should be free from errors. If you make a mistake while recording, you're only recording something that is 5 to 10 minutes. So I do expect you to pause and to start over. Or if you're using a platform that allows you to actually pause within the recording software, you can take a pause, take a break, take a breath, and then start recording again. So all of that, I think you should actually be able to put together a very professional sounding recording. I want you to utilize your public speaking voice. We discussed that when you were recording your advertisements, and I want you to do that again for this assignment. So the way that you are delivering this verbal form of communication should be a little bit more enhanced. The way that you are addressing your audience should have a pep to it. It should have some energy. It should have a clip and a pace to it. There should be bullet points that you've outlined and you are going through. There shouldn't be long pauses in between to where you're trying to come up with words. It should, again, be very professional. There are tools in the document that I have helped you, that I've outlined for you to help you develop all your points, to put everything in an order so that it is as easy can be for you to start to actually create. I don't expect you to get it right the first time. So if you have to re-record a few times to get this final recording together, that's okay. This should be fun. This is practice for you. It is just like public speaking. If we were meeting in person, I would expect you to practice some form of speech before you actually delivered it to our class. And this is what I want you to do for this assignment. Practice, record, listen to your voice. If you don't like the way that it sounds, go back and re-record it. This is all practice for you. And doing this show a few times through is what I expect. It's an exercise of what you should be doing to actually get to that final product of what you submit for this assignment. So that is the last and final section A, B, and C that you will have. I have outlined a bunch of different resources for you to actually do your recording, to create your logos. There is nothing that you should have to purchase in order to do this assignment. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your computer. If you can't do it from your phone or your computer, I'm sure that there is somebody that will let you borrow their phone or borrow their computer, again, because all of the resources that I have outlined for you are free. There is no cost to any of them. You don't need to buy microphones. You don't need to buy software. You don't need to buy apps. Everything that you do for this final is free. So there's nothing that you should have to pay for in order to do this. If for whatever reason you run into a resource that does ask you to pay for something, there are plenty of other resources that I've outlined. So please go back and find one that is free. I do not expect you to pay for anything for this course in order to do this final assignment. So that brings us to the end. In order for you to submit all that information, so your logo, your description, your goals and objectives, your actual recording, all of that, I have created a template for you in a PowerPoint. So you're going to upload all of that information into a PowerPoint, and then you're going to send that to me so I can actually grade it. And that really is just for me for ease of grading. So it gives you a way to streamline, organize everything so that I can go through and grade everything. You guys get creative with the way you submit your assignments, and I just want to try to streamline everything so I can get you your comments and your feedback back in an appropriate timeline. So you wouldn't normally create all of this in a PowerPoint. I'm just having you do this for this assignment so that I can easily get you your grade and your feedback. So that is the end of the project. Again, tons of resources, tons of information. Everything is outlined in the document. Make sure you read it over. But if you have any questions, I'm here to help you be successful. I'm here to have you put together a great assignment that you're proud of. Perhaps it sparks a new interest and you want to continue with this podcast. Who knows? But either way, you should have fun and be creative. And I look forward to all of the things that you guys create. Other than that, again, thank you for a great semester. I look forward to hopefully having you again in the future. And if I don't, best of luck to you. It's been an awesome semester getting to know all of you. Thanks, everybody.